Book name Modern India, file number 1. Um, First heading is structure. In that we have 7 objectives, starting with 5.0 objectives, 5.1 introduction, 5.2 establishment of British supremacy, 5.3 administrative system before 1857, and again it has 5 divisions. First one is 5.3.1 East India Company vis-a-vis British Parliament, 5.3.2 Economic Policy, 5.3.3 Land Revenue Policy, 5.3.4 Judicial System, 5.3.5 Impact of British Administration. Next one is 5.4 Administrative System after 1857. In that we have 8 subdivisions. The number 1, 5.4.1 the new administrative setup, 5.4.2 administrative decentralization, 5.4.3 economic policy, 5.4.4 organization of the army, 5.4.5 civil services, 5.4.6 relations with princely states, 5.4.7 hostile administration, 5.4.8 the question of self-government for India. Again we are coming to the main headline, that is 5.5 let us sum up, 5.6 keywords, and 5.7 answers to check your progress exercises. So first heading, that is 5.0 objectives. The beginning paragraph. The aim of this unit is to study the pattern and the growth of British administrative system before and after 1857. After going through this unit, you should be able to understand point number 1, the transformation of East India Company from a commercial to a territorial power. Point number 2, the growth of British Parliament control over Indian affairs without assuming direct responsibility for the governance of India. Third point, administrative system of the East India Company. Fourth point, the growth of India into a British colony. Fifth point, the assumption of direct control by British Parliament and the impact of British rule in India. And finally, the sixth point, the rise of national consciousness, spelling CONSCIOUSNESS, consciousness, and demand for self-government leading to freedom. Next side heading 5.1, that is introduction. Starting with the paragraph, the Mughals had established a centralized form of administration. In their administrative setup, as you can recall, the cult of personality dominated all departments. The personalized state was, however, unable to stand stress and strain and proved weak before the onslaught of the East India Company. The defeat at Plassey, Plassey is spelling, the defeat at Plassey exposed all the Indian weaknesses. From now onwards, the British established themselves as a stronger power. In this unit, we will study the patterns of British administrative system as under the East India Company and later as under the British Crown. We also discuss how behind the problem of administration lay the fundamental issue, do the nature and the object of British rule over India. This is the end of introduction. We are coming to the 5.2 main headline, that is establishment of British supremacy. The beginning of the paragraph. The East India Company began as a trading corporation. Its early organization was suitable to that of purely trade organization. Each chief factory or trading establishment was under the control of a president, later called governor, and a council consisting of the senior servants of the company in the factory. New and less important factories were put under the charge of a senior merchant or factor. The commercial factories, which had a president as head, came to be called as presidencies, such as those of Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. Jurisdiction and control of the company grew by different processes, namely the acquisition of zamindari rights, conquest or cession, spelling is Cession, cession of territory, and assumption of the Diwani, Diwani, that is the spelling. In 1698, the company bought the zamindari rights of the villages of Sutanati, Sutaniti, Sutanati, Calcutta, and Govindpur. In 1757, the company acquired rights in the 24 paraganas, Paraganas, on the basis of a quit rent, which was subsequently assigned to the company. In 1760, Mir Qasim, Mir Qasim, ceded to the company the district of Burdwan, Burdwan, Chittagong, and Midnapur, and this was confirmed by the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam. The constitutional position of the British Crown with regard to territories obtained by grant from the Emperor was not clear, but the official viewpoint is reflected in this statement. The statement is as follows, which I am starting now. In respect to such places as we have been or shall be acquired by treaty or grant from the Mughal or any of the Indian princes or government, your majesty's letters, patent are not necessary the property of the soil vesting in the company by the Indian grants, subject only to your majesty's right of sovereignty over the settlement. In respect to such places as have lately been required or shall henceforth be conquered, the property and sovereignty vests in your majesty by virtue of your known prerogative, and consequently the company can only derive a right to them by your majesty's grant. That is the statement given. And the next paragraph, our Englishmen, the company relied upon its chartered rights, while over the Indians the authority of the company was that of a zamindar under a local fauzdar, spelling Fauzdar. After the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the British became the supreme power in Bengal. The end of 5.2 heading, that is establishment of British supremacy. We are going to the third headline, 5.3, that is administration before 1857. Starting of the paragraph, when the British took control of Bengal, they tried to establish administration according to their requirements. Before 1765, the Nawab of Bengal was looking after the administration. Theoretically, he was working as an agent of the Mughal emperor, but in practice, he had absolute authority. As Nizam, he was in charge of law and order, military power, and criminal justice, and as a Diwan, he was responsible for the revenue collection and administration of civil justice. In 1764, after the Battle of Buxar, the British became supreme power in Bengal. Open annexation would have created political complication both for the company in India and the home government. The company therefore procured an order from the Mughal emperor granting them the Diwani, in the brackets, rights to collect land revenue, brackets close, for Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Even in the exercise of its power as Diwan, the actual collection of revenue initially remained in the hands of the Nawab's deputies. The Nizamat, spelling Nizamat, Nizamat remained in the hands of Nawab. This dual nature of administration came to an end in 1772 when the company decided to take actual control of revenue collection. The company had now grown from a predominantly commercial into a predominantly territorial power. The question now was whether India was to be governed by a trading corporation which would look primarily to its commercial interests, whether authority was to be exercised by British Parliament. With the expansion of political power of the company, misuse of power by its officials also increased. The acquisition of political power by the company was questioned in England, and there was pressure on Parliament to intervene. Continuous wars and mismanagement by the company officials landed in landed it in a deep financial crisis. The company requested Parliament for financial help. The Parliament agreed on the condition that it will regulate the administration of the company in England and India. For this purpose, the Regulating Act of 1773 was passed. So, end of the file 1, book name Modern India.
Continued. In 1764, after the Battle of Buxar, Buxar, the British became supreme power in Bengal. Open annexation, Annexation, open annexation would have created political complication both for the company in India and the home government. The company therefore procured an order from the Mughal emperor granting them the Diwani rights to collect land revenue for Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Even in the exercise of its powers as Diwan, the actual collection of revenue initially remained in the hands of the Nawab's deputies. NAWAB', Nawab's deputies, DEPUTIES. The Nizamat, NIZAMAT, the Nizamat remained in the hands of the Nawab. This dual nature of administration came to an end in 1772 when the company decided to take actual control of revenue collection. The company had now grown from a predominantly predominantly commercial into a predominantly territorial power. Territorial power. The question now was whether India was to be governed by a trading corporation which would look primarily to its commercial interests or whether authority was to be exercised by British Parliament. With the expansion of political power of the company, misuse of power by its officials also increased. The acquisition of political power by the company was questioned was questioned in England and there was pressure on Parliament to intervene. Intervene. Continuous wars and mismanagement by the company officials landed it in deep financial crisis. Financial crisis. The company requested Parliament for financial help. The Parliament agreed on the condition that it will regulate the administration of company in England and India. For this purpose, the Regulating Act of 1773 was passed. Subheading 5.3.1 East India Company vis-a-vis British Parliament. The Regulating Act of 1773 might be regarded as the first serious attempt by the British Parliament to regulate Indian affairs. It constituted for the first time a supreme government headed by a Governor General of Fort William, William, William in Bengal and 4 councillors, LLORS, councillors having the supervisory authority over the presidencies PRESIDENCIES, presidencies of Bombay and Madras. The presidencies were forbidden, FORBIDDEN, to make war or peace with Indian states without the consent, CONSENT, consent of Governor General, GOVERNOR, Governor General, GENERAL, and Council, COUNCIL, except in cases of imminent, IMMINENT, imminent necessity, NECESSITY, and also in the cases where they had received direct orders from the Court of Directors, DIRECTORS. The Act also provided for the establishment of a Supreme Court of Judicature, JUDICATURE, Judicature at Calcutta. The Regulating Act recognized the right of Parliament to regulate the civil, military, and revenue affairs of the company's territories in India and registers the first concern in the intervention of the Indian affairs. The Act suffered from certain fundamental fundamental defects, defects which contributed to the difficulties of Warren Hastings, Warren Hastings, HASTINGS, who was opposed by his councillors. The Act was also vague, VAGUE, about the jurisdiction control over subordinate presidencies and the jurisdiction between the Supreme Council and the Supreme Court. As a consequence of the defects of the Act, Warren Hastings found himself unable to carry out his administrative responsibilities, and one crisis, CRISIS, often developed another in the council. In 1781, steps were taken to bring greater control over the company's affairs. The North Fox, NORTH-FOX, the North Fox Coalition, COALITION, coalition made a serious attempt to reorganize the company's system of government. They introduced two bills. Charles James Fox, CHARLES, Charles James, JAMES, Fox, FOX, spoke of the company's administration as a system of despotism, DESPOTISM, inverted comma, unmatched in all the histories of the world, close inverted commas. The company expressed its opposition to the placing of its patronage, PATRONAGE, patronage at the disposal of ministers. The bills were passed by the House of Commons but were rejected by the Lords. Page 55, continuation. On assumption of office of the Prime Minister, William Pitt, WILLIAM, William Pitt decided to introduce an India Bill. Pitt had the support of only a minority, MINORITY, minority in the House of Commons, Commons. At the same time, he had to allay, allay the fears of the East India Company. Pitt negotiated, negotiated with the company and with its approval worked out a plan of parliamentary control over Indian affairs known as Pitt's India Bill, which passed into a law in August 1784, 1784. According to this act, distinction, distinction between territories and commerce was to be maintained. Territorial administration was to be placed under a representative body of parliament, while the company was to continue to control commerce. The government in India, however, would still be run in the name of the company, but political and revenue matters would be subject to the control and supervision of the proposed parliamentary body. Pitt's India Act established an effective instrument of control, direction and supervision which worked with slight alterations, alterations till the year 1858, 1858, and the control of the crown was now complete over India. In the first half of the 19th century, the character of legislation, legislation for the administration of British territories was to some extent influenced, influenced by utilitarian, utilitarian thought and principles as shown by Eric Stokes, Eric Stokes, Stokes, in his book titled The English Utilitarians and India, Oxford in the year 1959, 1959. The renewal of the charter, Charter, in the year 1813, 1813 was marked by expression of liberal principles. Administration of the company was left in its hands, but the monopoly, monopoly of the company's Indian trade was abolished. By the Act of 1833, 1833, the company surrendered, surrendered all its personal property in India and held it in trust for the crown. The company disappeared as a commercial agency in India, remaining as a political agent for the crown. Now the government of India was reconstituted, reconstituted on a new model which gave it an all India character. Subheading 5.3.2 Economic Policy, ECONOMIC, Economic Policy. The economic policy of the British government led to a rapid transformation of India's economy into a colonial economy, whose nature and structure were determined by British needs. From 1600, 1600 to the year 1757, 1757, the East India Company's role was of a trading corporation which brought goods or precious metals into India and exchanged them for Indian goods like textiles. After the Battle of Plassey, Plassey, the company's commercial relations underwent a qualitative change. Qualitative, qualitative change. The company now used its political control to push its Indian trade. Industrial revolution in Britain further helped to strengthen the colonial pattern pattern between the year 1793 to 1813 1813. British manufacturers launched a powerful campaign CAMPAIGN against the company and its commercial privileges and finally succeeded in abolishing its monopoly of Indian trade. The aim of British industry was to transform India into a consumer of British manufacturers and a supplier of raw materials. The colonial pattern of bondage and exploitation brought about the disintegration of the entire Indian social and economic system. The company went on putting additional burdens in order to consolidate consolidate its own position in the territories it possessed and to extend its influence through expeditions expeditions and war. The company needed extra money to pay high dividends to its shareholders in England, tributes to British government and bribes to influential persons. Influential persons. After 1813 1813, in addition to export surplus, the company extracted extracted wealth of India as home charges to England. Wealth of India as home charges to England. These home charges included, besides other forms of expenditure, payment of interest on the Indian debt. By 1858, Indian debts Indian debts stood at 69.5 million million. India got no adequate economic or material return for this export of wealth to Britain. The fact of the drain from the year 1757 to the year 1857 has been accepted by British officials. Lawrence Sullivan Lawrence Sullivan Lawrence Sullivan, Deputy Chairman of the Court of Directors, remarked, "Our system acts very much like a sponge, sponge, drawing up all the good things from the banks of the Ganges, Ganges, and squeezing them down on the banks of the Thames, Thames. Side heading 5.3.3 Land Revenue Policy. After assuming control in different parts of India, the company followed a number of methods for the collection of land revenue depending on the local conditions. Mostly it was in the form of revenue farming. Gradually, the company acquired the knowledge about the land revenue system prevalent prevalent in India and devised devised long-term policies in different regions. The main aim was to increase the tax collections with little concern for the peasantry or age-long practices followed in India. Mainly, three types of settlements were followed in different parts of the country. Point 1. Permanent settlement. In 1793, permanent settlement for Bengal, Bihar and Orissa was introduced. Its special features were: A. The zamindars became the owners of the entire land in their zamindaris and became agents of the government in collecting land revenue. B. A zamindar was to pay over 9 of what he received from the feasting to the state, retaining a tenth as remuneration for his exertion. Exertion. C. The land revenue was to be collected from zamindar was permanently fixed by declaring zamindars as the owners of land. The permanent settlement by declaring zamindars as owners of land brought into existence a wealthy and privileged class of zamindars which owed its existence to British rule. This class would therefore be compelled by its own basic interests to support it. The permanent settlement was later extended to parts of Banaras, Banaras, and North Madras. With the permanent settlement, the company lost all contact with the peasants who were now at the mercy of the zamindars. The fixation of revenue had no scientific basis and was ad hoc. ADHOC. The long-standing ties between peasant and zamindars were arbitrarily arbitrarily annulled. Annulled. The burden of land revenue was very high. The zamindars also faced problems. Their zamindaries, ZAMINDARIES, their zamindaries were auctioned, auctioned for non-payment of revenue. This encouraged a new group of people to become zamindars, the urban-based merchants, URBAN, the urban-based merchants, speculators, 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 money lenders, etc., bought zamindaries. This group had no permanent interests in the development of land or the welfare of peasantry. As a result, a number of peasant uprisings took place in this region. The prominent were in the year 1795 in Panchet, PANCHET, in the year 1798 in Raipur, RAIPUR, in the year 1799 in Balsar, BALASORE, and in 1799 to 1800 in villages around Midnapore, MIDNAPORE. In 1762-63, taxes collected from Bengal were about rupees 6,46,000, but by 1790, the company was collecting rupees 26,80,000, 2680,000. Bengal, once known as the granary, GRANARY, of the East, became almost barren, BARREN. Hunger and famine, FAMINE, death and disease stalked, STALKED, stalked the country. The Select Committee of the House of Commons reported in the year 1783. About 1 lakh a year is remitted from Bengal on the company's account to China, and the whole of the product of that money flows into the direct trade from China to Europe. EUROPE, Europe. Besides this, Bengal sends a regular supply in time of peace to those presidencies in India which are unequal to their own establishment. Point 2. Ryotwari Settlement, RYOTWARI, Ryotwari Settlement. According to the Ryotwari Settlement introduced in parts of Madras and Bombay presidencies in the beginning of the 19th century, the cultivator was to be recognized as the owner of his plot of land subject to the payment of land revenue. Here, the British also recognized the Mirasdas, Mirasdars, the Mirasdas, that is, members of village communities and peasants who paid tax direct to state. These Mirasdas became small landlords. The ryots' right of ownership was, however, negated, NEGATED, was negated by 3 factors. A. Exorbitant land revenue, EXORBITANT, exorbitant land revenue. B. Government's right to enhance land revenue at will, and the fact that C. The ryot had to pay revenue even when his produce was partially or wholly destroyed. The pasture, PASTURE, and wasteland which belonged to the village communities were now appropriated by the state. The burden of revenue also increased. Point 3. Mahalwari Settlement, MAHALWARI, Mahalwari Settlement, a modified form of zamindari which came to be known as Mahalwari Settlement was introduced in the Gangetic Valley, northwest provinces and parts of central India and in the Punjab. Settlement was to be made village by village with landlords or heads of families who collectively claimed to be the landlords of the village or estate. The British introduced a fundamental, FUNDAMENTAL, fundamental change in the existing land systems of the country. In fact, the stability, autonomy, and continuity of Indian villages was shaken by the introduction of these new changes in the land. Side heading 5.3.4, Judicial System. The early charters of the company gave it authority to make reasonable laws, constitutional orders and ordinances, 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 and within limits to punish offences committed by its servants, but they gave no territorial powers of jurisdiction. In 1661, Charles II, CHARLES, Roman number 2, authorized the governor and council of each factory to exercise criminal and civil jurisdiction not only over the company's servants but over all persons under the said governor or company. After the assumption of Diwani, the company to some extent became responsible for civil justice. In criminal matters of Muhammadan, Muhammadan, Muhammadan law was followed, but in civil cases, the personal law of the parties was applied. In civil suits, appeals lay to the Sardar Diwani Adalat, SADAR. Sadar Diwani, 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 Adalat, Adalat, which in effect meant the president and members of council, while criminal appeals lay with Sadar Nizamat Adalat, SADAR, Sadar Nizamat, 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 Adalat, Adalat, which was under the Nawab. However, the first concrete step in organizing judicial administration was taken up by Warren Hastings, Warren, Warren Hastings, Hastings. He for the first time made the district as a unit of judicial administration. In each district, civil and criminal courts were established. In each district, collectors were to preside, preside civil courts, and in criminal courts, an Indian officer worked with the help of two Maulvis, Maulvis. Over the district courts were created the courts of appeal at Calcutta. The Sadar Nivan Adalat consisted of the governor and two members of the council assisted by the Diwan of the Exchequer, Exchequer. The head Quanungo, 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 etc. Sadar Nizamat Adalat was presided over by the Nazims, Nazim apostrophe S, Nazim's deputy, a Muslim officer who was assisted by Maulvis, Maulvis. In the year 1773, a regulating act set up in Bengal the Supreme Court, which derived its power from the Crown. The establishment of the Supreme Court led to the emergence of two rival sets of judicial authorities, the Supreme Court and Sadar Diwani Adalat. A temporary solution was found with the appointment of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court as President of the Sadar Diwani Adalat. In the year 1790, criminal appeals were transferred to the Governor General and Council, who was to be assisted by Chief Qasi, Qasi, and two Muftis, Muftis. This was part of the general policy of Cornwallis, Cornwallis, Cornwallis in replacing Indians by Europeans in all higher posts. Cornwallis established district courts under British judges. He separated the posts of civil judge and the collector, from whom appeals lay, to four new appellate courts set up at Calcutta, Dhaka, Dacca, Murshidabad, 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 and Patna, Patna. Below the district courts were registrars' courts headed by Europeans and a number of subordinate courts headed by Indian judges known as munsifs, 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 and amins, amins. Cornwallis erected the structure of a system of government under which India came to be ruled for the next 100 years. It was based on the perpetuation, Perpetuation, perpetuation of foreign rule and exploitation of the wealth of the governed, governed. In the year 1801, the judicial authority of the Governor General and Council came to an end and 3 judges were appointed to form the Sadar Diwani Adalat or Civil Appellate Court. The principle of duality, duality, between the courts of the Crown and the Zamindari courts ended in 1801 when the Indian High Court Act established high courts at Calcutta, Madras and Bombay in place of the Supreme Court as well as the Sadar Court. Page 58. The important features of the new judicial setup were the rule of law, equality before law, recognition of the right to be judged by his personal law, and growth of the professional and trained judicial hierarchy. Hierarchy. However, the new judicial system suffered from certain serious weaknesses. In criminal cases, the Europeans had separate codes and even laws. They were tried by European judges who at times gave them undue protection. In civil matters, the situation was quite serious. The courts were situated at distant places. The procedures were long and time consuming. Justice was proving very expensive. Expensive. Village committees and panchayats lost importance even in the village matters. Side heading 5.3.5 Impact of British Administration. The benefits of British administration could be seen in the maintenance of peace and order, belief in liberty, and ushering, ushering in a process of modernization. A common system of law and uniform court of government produced a large measure of unity. However, the remote and impersonal nature of administration proved to be both a source of weakness and strength. Its defect was that it produced a lack of sensitiveness to the feelings of the people. The British administrative policies resulted in the disappearance of indigenous indigenous institutions of local self-government and exclusion of Indians from higher ranks of administration. The effects of subordination of Indian economy to British interests were many, such as the ruin of artisans and craftsmen, impoverishment, impoverishment of the peasantry, ruin of old zamindars, and rise of a class of new landlords, stagnation and deterioration. Deterioration of agriculture. The general discontent which began to brew up among the Indians as a consequence of British policies ultimately led to the outbreak of 1857-1857. Check your progress. 1. Note. A. Write your answer in the space provided below each question. 2. Check your answers with those given at the end of the unit. Question 1. What were the different processes by which the jurisdiction of the company grew? Question 2. Which was the first major act passed by the British Parliament to regulate Indian affairs right 5 lines on it. Question 3. Write 3 important features of the permanent settlement. Question 4. Write 3 main achievements and 3 disadvantages of the new judicial system. Continued 5.4 Administrative System after 1857 1857. The company's economic and administrative policies gave rise to widespread discontent in all sections of societies. This discontent, together with various other factors, gave rise to the revolt of 1857. You must have read about it in Unit 4. The revolt shook the East India Company. The British government also got alarmed. ALARMED. All sections of political opinion in Britain agreed that the East India Company should be set aside and British government should assume direct responsibility for the administration of India. The British Crown, by a proclamation in the year 1858, 1858, assumed the direct control of India. Side heading 5.4.1 The new administrative setup. By the Act of 1858, 1858, India was to be governed directly by and in the name of the Crown through a Secretary, Secretary, Secretary of State in England. The Secretary of State was to be assisted by a council of 15 members, of whom at least 9 would have served in India for not less than 10 years and would have left India not more than 10 years before their appointment to the council. The central administration in India continued to remain in the hands of the Governor General, who was given the new title of Viceroy, Viceroy. An executive council was formed to help the Governor General. The members of Executive Council were to act as the heads of departments and advisors to Governor General. The India Councils Act of 1861, 1861 enlarged the Governor General's Council from 6 to 12 members for making laws, in which capacity it was known as the Imperial, IMPERIAL, Imperial Legislative, LEGISLATIVE, Legislative Council. In this council, Indians could also be associated for making laws. The Indian National Congress, after its formation in the year 1885, 1885, demanded a number of changes in the administration. As a result, the Act of 1892, 1892 was passed. By this act, the number of members in the council was increased from 10 to 16, 16. The act also empowered the council to discuss the annual financial statement. They were not to vote the budget item by item, but could indulge in a free and fair criticism of the policy of the government. The role of supervision and control of the Secretary of State for India was increased, and a proportional diminution, DIMINUTION, diminution in the powers of Governor General vis-a-vis the home government was brought about. The dual control, DUAL, the dual control of the President of the Board of Control and the directors of the company was abolished, and all the authority was centered in the Secretary of State. The financial powers enabled the Governor General to scrutinize, scrutinise, scrutinize and control the expenditure of the government of India. The Royal Titles Act of 1877 clearly brought out the subordination, subordination of the Governor General and his council to the authority of the Secretary of State. While the powers of the Secretary of State were increased, the checks upon his authority were weakened. Weakened. The Indian Council was reduced to advisory functions. In fact, the Secretary of State began to be regarded as the Grand Mughal. When the Viceroy of India, Lord Mayo, Lord Mayo, Mayo, tried to assert his council's authority, he was clearly told that the principle is that the final control and direction of the affairs of India rest with the home government and not with the authorities appointed and established by the Crown under parliamentary enactment. Enactment in India itself. These developments became possible as a result of the laying of a direct cable line between England and India in the year 1870. The opening of the Suez Canal, Suez Canal, Canal, and the shortening of voyage between the two countries by introduction of steam vessels which helped to quicken communication. After abolition of the East India Company, the Crown began to tighten its control over the Indian administration. It was in fact a period of British imperialism in India. Page 59, continuation. Subheading 5.4.2 Administrative Decentralization. ADMINISTRATIVE Administrative Decentralization. DECENTRALISATION. Decentralization. A beginning in the direction of decentralization was made by the Act of 1861. It provided legislative powers to the presidencies of Bombay and Madras, but they had to obtain permission from the Governor General for passing an act. Lord Mayo, Lord Mayo, Mayo, in the year 1870, for the first time granted fixed sums to provinces to spend it as they wished on police, jails, education, medical services, etc. More financial independence was given in the year 1877 when Lord Lytton, Lytton, transferred certain other expenditures like land revenue, excise, EXCISE, general administration. By the year 1882, the system of giving fixed grants to the provinces was put to an end. Instead, the provinces were asked to generate a fixed income from the provincial taxes, PROVINCIAL, provincial taxes. According to these arrangements, some sources of revenue were fully handed over to the provinces, some partially and some reserved from centre. The expenditure on war and famines Famines. Famines was the responsibility of the center. This arrangement continued till 1902. 1902. Local bodies. Due to financial problems, the government further decentralized the administration and promoted municipalities. Municipalities. Municipalities and district boards. The process started in the year 1864. 1864. In the initial years, most of the members were nominated and the bodies were presided, presided over by the district magistrates, magistrates. They were to generate revenue to be spent in their jurisdiction. The situation improved by the year 1882. 1882. Now the local boards were to be developed throughout the country and not only in towns. These bodies were assigned definite definite duties and funds. The majorities of nominated members was replaced by elected members. Now official members were limited to 1/3. Urban bodies were to be independent and non-officials were also allowed to chair the boards. But still the official control was firm. Right to vote restricted and non-officials enjoyed very few powers, as pointed out by Bipin Chandra, Bipin, Bipin Chandra, Chandra, except in the presidency cities of Calcutta, Madras and Bombay. The local bodies functioned just like departments of the government and were in no way good examples of local self-government. Subheading 5.4.3 Economic Policy. The British continued to exploit India's economy. The burden of the East India Company's London establishment and of dividends dividends to its shareholders was replaced after the year 1858 by the expenditure on the Secretary of State's India Office. The Indian debt in England, which was already considerable as a result of the company's military ventures and suppression of the mutiny, was further increased. When compensation to the company's shareholders was added to Government of India's account. The home charges also included pensions to British Indian officials, costs of army training, etc. In the year 1901, the home charges came to about $17.3 million. $17.3 million. Both home charges and private remittances were channelized through Indian exports, as pointed out by the nationalist economists from Dadabhai Nauroji onwards. Dadabhai Nauroji, Naoroji onwards. The character of economic drain, which was originally mercantilist, mercantilist, underwent a change and it now took the form of exploitation through free trade. In the later stage, it got linked with the structure of British Indian finance capitalism. In fact, India's export surplus became vital for Britain's balance of payments by the end of the 19th century, 19th century. In the 19th century, the developing capitalist economies of Europe had erected high tariff walls. Tariff, TARIFF, tariff walls. Britain was finding it difficult to get markets for its exports. The policy of free trade in India meant a ready market for its Lancashire, LANCASHIRE, for its Lancashire textiles, while India's export surplus helped to counterbalance 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 British deficits DEFICITS. Besides military and strategic advantages, this indeed was a solid advantage which the British gained from the Indian Empire. The British rule inhibited inhibited and curbed indigenous 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 industry through a variety of structural constraints. Structural constraints. CONSTRAINTS. The government policies actively promoted the European enterprise and discriminated against Indians. The railway network and freight rates. Freight, FREIGHT. Rates encouraged traffic with ports as against inland centers. The organized money market was largely under the British control. The only exception, EXCEPTION, exception being the Punjab National Bank and the Bank of India. The British controlled the bulk of the external trade through exchange banks, export-import firms and shipping concerns. The British tried to justify their policy by pointing to the remittance of capital which had been invested in railways, plantations, mines and mills, which they proclaimed would lead to the development and modernization of India. But the establishment of railways was geared was geared to British commercial and strategic needs, while plantations, mines and mills promoted interlocking of British financial, commercial and industrial activity and served to intensify intensify the capitalist exploitation of the Indians by the British. The land revenue policy became interwoven interwoven with its commercial policy. The government made no worthwhile effort for a long time for the improvement of agriculture. The only government initiative that could be mentioned in this context is the giving of some paltry, 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 Takkavi, TACCAVI, Takkavi loans from the 1870s, 1870, and the introduction of a canal system passing through Punjab, Western UP and parts of Madras Presidency. In fact, the colonial structure acted as an inbuilt depressor, DEPRESSOR, inbuilt depressor as provided by the famines in the 1870 and 1890s. Subheading 5.4.4 Organization of the Army. Some major changes were made in the organization of the army in 1861, keeping in view the outbreak of 1857. With the takeover of the administration by the Crown, the army of the company was also merged with the Crown troops. TROOPS troops. In the reorganization of the army, the main concern of the British was that the happening of 1857 may never be repeated. For this, a number of steps were taken. 1. The proportion of Europeans in the army was raised. Bracket. In 1857, there were 40,000 Europeans and 2,15,000 In 1857, there were 40,000 Europeans and 215 Indians. In Bengal, it was fixed in the ratio of 1:2, and in Madras and Bombay, it was 2:5. Point 2. In the important branches of army like European hold was established over negligible Indians. Later, the same policy was followed about tanks and armoured corps. ARMOURED, armoured corps. CORPS. Point 3. A distinction of martial and non-martial races. Martial, MARTIAL, and non-martial races was made, and the former were recruited in large numbers. The soldiers of Bihar, Awadh, AWADH, Bengal and South India who had participated in the revolt of 1857 were declared non-martial, while the soldiers who supported the British like Sikhs, SIKHS, Gurkhas, GURKHAS and Pathans, PATHANS were declared martial. Point 4. To divide the soldiers belonging to different race or caste, they were put in different companies. Point 5. Efforts were made to encourage regional loyalties among the soldier so that they may not unite on national considerations. Thus, the homogeneity, HOMOGENEITY, homogeneity of the army was broken up. Indian soldiers were used in wars of the British outside India. Continued. Side heading 5.4.5 Civil Services. Cornwallis, CORNWALLIS, Cornwallis had relegated, relegated the Indians to a subordinate, SUBORDINATE, subordinate position, and this position did not alter in spite of the Charter Act of 1833 and Queen's Proclamation of 1858. All the superior positions were reserved for Europeans. The officers for Indian civil service were selected through a competitive examination. Though the doors were open for Indians, but more than one or two could never be selected because the examination was held far away in London. The examination was heavily based on the knowledge of Latin, Greek and English. The Indians had little background of these languages. The maximum age was gradually reduced from 23 in 1859 1859 to 19 years 19 years in the year 1878. All efforts of Indians to remove these hurdles hurdles bore little results. Apart from civil services, all major positions in police, public works department, forest, post and telegraph and health services were reserved for Europeans. Side heading 5.4.6 Relations with Princely States. After the revolt of 1857, the British realized that the princely states could play an important role in checking the discontent of Indian masses. Therefore, the policy of annexation annexation of Indian states was given up and their cooperation was sought in strengthening the British imperialism. The princely states were asked to extend their cooperation. A number of powers were restored to them and they were assured that if they continued to be loyal to the British, they would not be harmed. HARMED. Through the policy of paramountcy, 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 a close check on the states was also maintained. Now, no Indian ruler was allowed to maintain relations with other countries except through the British. British interfered interfered in day-to-day functioning of the states through their agents called residents. British residents and nominated ministers were posted in almost all the states. They were to protect British interests and implement implement British policies. The right to recognize the successors was also reserved with the British government. If any ruler did not fall in line, he was replaced with the person of the British choice. Likewise, the rulers of Baroda in 1873 and Manipur in 1891 were removed. In other states also, a policy of interference was followed. In spite of these policies, majority of Indian rulers supported the British to secure their status and privileges. Side heading 5.4.7 Hostile Administration. Hostile administration. The British, through their administrative policies, not only drained the wealth from India and established supremacy of Europeans, they followed a deliberate deliberate policy of hostility towards Indians. We have already referred to the consequences of British rule in earlier units. Here we will study a few areas where this hostility and anti-Indian bias was most pronounced. Point 1. Education. From 1833 onwards, the British supported the growth of limited education. However, the establishment of the universities at Calcutta, Bombay and Madras gave a new impetus impetus to higher education. But with increasing education, the educated Indians developed critical attitude towards the British rule and began organizing the national movement. This alarmed, ALARMED, alarmed the British, and they adopted a hostile attitude towards higher education. Point 2. Public services. The British spent huge amounts on army and wars, while fund allocation for health, irrigation, sanitation and public works department was meagre. MEAGRE, meagre. Point 3. Curbs on press. CURBS, curbs on press. The credit for growth of printing press also goes to the British. But as soon as the press started playing an important role in building public opinion and growth of consciousness, a number of legislations were passed to check its freedom. The Vernacular Press Act of 1878 was a serious attempt in curbing the press. Point 4. Racial discrimination. RACIAL, racial discrimination, DISCRIMINATION, discrimination. The British in the recruitment of civil and military officers and judicial matters followed a policy of discrimination against the Indians. British enjoyed all the privileges and Indians were deprived of their due rights. Point 5. Labor laws. LABOUR, labor laws. With the growing plantations and factories, the number of workforce or laborers was rising. These laborers used to work for long hours in unhygienic, unhygienic and poor working conditions. Most of these organizations were owned by the British while the workforce was Indian. The British made no serious attempt to provide relief for laborers. The Factory Act passed in the year 1881 and 1891 mainly dealt with child labor and women. These could provide very little relief, while for plantations all the laws were favorable to planters, almost all of whom were Europeans. Due to this hostile attitude of administration, the Indians started demanding right for self-government. But this demand also failed to invoke favorable response. We will discuss this in the following sections. Side heading 5.4.8. The question of self-government for India. After 1857, the idea of self-government for the Indians was completely abandoned. ABANDONED, abandoned. Sir Charles Wood, CHARLES, Charles Wood, WOOD, Secretary of State for India, put forth the view that representative bodies were impractical in India. The British justified their inaction on the ground that India was not a nation. They steered divisions, STIRRED, steered divisions, 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 primarily along religious lines, but also used caste and regional identities for this purpose. Hunter's book Indian Musalmans, MUSALMANS, Indian Musalmans in the year 1870, while supporting the Muslims, emphasized EMPHASISED, emphasized the distinctiveness and separateness of Muslims and called them a homogeneous community. Lord Dufferin, Dufferin. Lord Dufferin, the Viceroy, described the Muslims in 1888 as a nation of 50 million having uniform religious and social customs. Wood, in a letter to Lord Elgin, Elgin, the Viceroy, wrote, inverted commas, we have maintained our power by playing off bracket up one part against the other, and we must continue to do so, close brackets. Events in India, however, were taking a shape on account of which the government was ultimately forced to take notice of the people's wishes. The 70s was a decade of increasing disturbances. India experienced some of the worst famines, famines. A.O. Hume, Hume, Hume in 1872 warned Lord Northbrook, Northbrook, Lord Northbrook of the situation that we have now beaten between us and destruction nothing but the bayonets. That we have now between us and destruction nothing but the bayonets. Bayonets. Political agitation was gathering momentum during this period. The Indian National Congress, which came into existence in the year 1885, became an important instrument for the articulation articulation of the wishes and aspirations of the Indian and raised its voice in support of a responsible system of government. But the government had no intention of satisfying the aspirations of the Indian people. When the British were forced to introduce legislation in the year 1892, it became clear that the government intended to effect no real participation of the Indians in the government. With the national movement gaining around, the British were again forced to adopt a conciliatory conciliatory move, and the Act of 1909 was passed. But the principle of separate electorate for the Muslims was introduced in the Act, and 8 of the 27 seats were reserved for them. It was only after Gandhi had emerged on the national scene and the national movement had become an all India mass movement that a visible shift in the British attitude took place. Check your progress. 2. Notes.